Hey, and welcome back to Beginners Fab. My name is McGrew. Today I'm going to go over a little bit about my bumper that I made for the Trooper recently. I'm actually not in work clothes today for probably the first time ever on Beginners Fab. I recently made a bumper that I showed in some of my vlogs for the Trooper, and I actually have recorded some videos that were, I guess you could say, kind of introductions to the bumper, but I didn't really go much over the bumper in the construction process because, well, honestly, I was in a hurry and I didn't have time to really set up everything to go over it. So I'm going to go over it in a little bit more detail. I'm going to show some of the, I guess you could call them mistakes. I don't really consider them to be mistakes because I didn't really design it in any particular way, so I didn't make an error, I guess you could say, in the way that I designed it and developed it. I just needed to go and adjust it based on how I was going about making the bumper at the time. So I'm going to talk about that as well. Some of the things you might want to avoid in the future. I'm going to take my hat off so maybe you can see my face a little bit. And I'm going to show you how I made it, why I made it the way I made it, and also what I plan to do in the very near future to quote unquote fix some of what I did. So here we go. First off, I need to kind of give you an idea of what I was looking for in this bumper. The bumper I wanted was to be low profile, which this one clearly is. Not only is it not very tall, but it's also not very thick. I used a 1 3/4 by 3 rear section of tubing for the back, and I used 2 by 2 tubing here on the side. All the tubing I used is actually 1/8 wall. So, well, really it's 0.120 wall, but that's fine for my uses. Now, that's kind of thin for what, well, not kind of, that is thin for what most HD bumpers in the States use. But I wasn't going for an HD bumper. What I wanted was a medium weight bumper. I wanted it to be stronger than what I had originally on the truck because I needed it to be more functional, but I didn't need anything quite as heavy as is typical for the heavy duty bumpers. Now, that being said, I'm not dissing the heavy duty bumpers as being bad bumpers. They're just a lot less convenient. They don't offer the gas economy that I need. And for the use of my vehicle, they are actually more of a damage item. They cause more damage than benefit to me because the weight of the bumper, and they're very heavy. They wear the suspension more. They do all these things that just honestly I didn't need or want on my bumper. So once again, my bumper selection was with the particular idea in mind. It was that it was going to be 1/8 wall, approximately 120 wall really, material. It would be strong enough to support a high lift jack 50-inch long, which I have, and also be able to support my 32-inch spare tire. Now, those were the requirements because I'm actually building a swing out tire carrier right here on this corner of the truck, probably. But I also wanted the bumper to have tow hooks or tow points so that I could use it to get people out, get myself out. I've had to already pull a number of people, and all those things were important to me as well. So what I did here was, first off, I started with the rear bumper section, which is what you can see here in the back. I knew that I didn't want sharp corners, so I planned in for the beveled corner pieces that you can see right there. And I also knew that I wanted, in case I had hit something and had to slide off the back, like a tree trunk or whatever, because that's more commonly what I run into here, I wanted these to be angled upward. Now, because I didn't want it to stick down too far on the front side either, I went ahead and tried to keep it as close to the the design possible of the height so that it would protect the bottom of the not the chassis there, but the body panels there, but not be too low. And then here at the back, to make it meet with the back bumper section, I just tapered it up there. Now I just by eye decided how much I wanted to taper it up. I decided I wanted to do a 3.5-inch length taper there, and then I went ahead and plated it up on the bottom. You'll also see here that this is an open hole, which isn't so much an error as much as just a being in a rush and knowing that I'd go back and fix it later. So what I'll do is I will soon go back and grind all this bed liner off, because I just use spray on bed liner out of a can. And I will fill that, I will plug that hole, and I will also be putting a solid plate that goes around this triangle here, which will not only give it more strength, but it will also enclose it so that it doesn't get as much mud and junk clogged up in there. Now here you'll see that this actually doesn't meet. Well, that's not a real good design, but originally I had intended on cutting a portion of tube there and welding it in. And in the end, what happened was I found that that wasn't the most efficient. So you can see here in the back, maybe. Let me see if you can see back in there. I don't know if you can. Yeah, you can see back there that I actually have a piece of 1/8-inch plate back there that allows me to have the strength on the back side. And then I have this piece of 1/8-inch plate here on the front side. And when I put on that plate here, it'll box it all in. And it's completely strong as it is, because I have that back plate welded like right there, but on the back side, and then right here, and then across the top and across the bottom. Plus this plate in the front. So this thing is not moving. In fact, me and my friend both stood on it. We jumped up and down. The thing doesn't move at all. Now that, once again, is because I planned on using it originally one way and then I changed, but I have the plan of boxing it in. I could just put another piece of 2x2 plate there that's 1/8 inch thick and weld it on there, and that'd be completely fine as well. However, I want the whole side boxed in just because it's a preference of look. Now, you'll see here on the back that my tow hooks are not just welded onto the outside, and you have to excuse the not so perfect welds. They're very, very strong. They're just not dimed in like a lot of people can do, because, well, I'm not that talented yet as a welder. They, once again, are very strong though. And those are 3 cords. I actually welded one in the joint, and then I welded one up here and then one down there, and I did that on all sides, front and back. And that's what I wanted to mention. These welds here, as you can see by looking in here, this actually passes through, as you can probably see, just like that. So what I did was I actually notched out this piece here of the tubing, front and back, took that chunk out of it, and then I put these pieces on the chassis, bolted onto the chassis first. Then I slipped this tubing over it with both pieces mounted to the chassis as the bumper supports, and then I welded them up. Now, originally, and this is what I suggest, this is what I did. I tack welded on the inside, on both sides first. Then I put the, well, let me rephrase that. I bolted these on both sides, there and there. I set the tube on top of them, marked them where they should go. Then I cut the notch out and I slipped it over. Well, I didn't want it to be too loose, so I cut narrower on the outside than I probably should have, and that caused a up motion. It caused this to twist upwards slightly on both ends. So I looked like I kind of had wings. Well, I talked to a friend and I thought I was going to have to pull the corners down and re-straighten it out, because I thought maybe once I had run this weld here it had warped. But really what had happened was I hadn't trimmed this enough in here and it was pushing it out by necessity. So what I then did was, when I cut a relief cut all the way around, the bumper had place enough to move downward, and it actually went from that angle there to that angle there. And it was fixed without me having to do any pulling with the high lift jack. And then I just made sure, and this is very important to do, when I put this bumper together, welding wise, I didn't run a bunch of welds in the same area. I welded here first, and then I welded over there. I just did short runs, and then I welded there, and then I welded over there, and I just kept skipping around on the bumper that way, the whole way around, to make sure that I didn't heat warp the bumper. And the bumper actually turned out really, really straight. Much straighter, in fact, than I've had any of my other projects turn out with this kind of welding degree. Now, also keep in mind that I tack welded everything together first. So everything was actually how it was going to be placed. Then I went back and fully welded it all back together, which I suggest. The reason I did the pull hooks here the way that I did is because I just trust pull hooks that are actually attached as the bumper brackets more than I do a plate welded onto the back of a bumper, even if it's 1/4 inch or 3/8 or 5/8, whatever it is that you're looking for in a bumper. 5/8 is really, really thick, but 3/16, 3/8 still is. I would rather it be just a full pass through than I would it to be a plate, mounted to the outside of the bumper. That's just a personal preference of mine. Now, I've had some people say, well, the problem is your bumper's not tall enough. It's too short. Well, I like it that way, honestly. These aren't, if they get a little damage to me, doesn't really matter. This is all that I want protection from in the back, is that right there, in case somebody hits me. Well, what if they go under my bumper, people say? Well, this tow hook, while I will be pulling this off, I'll be cutting all that off because I didn't make this. I don't know where it came from. It's got 1/4 inch plate, plus this is a 1/4 inch thick wall tubing. So I'm going to cut all this off, but if anybody hits me from under, I'm still protected. And I might even go back and make some runners that go from the corners down to this. I'm not sure. But I mean, seriously, it's protected. I have gas tank protection there, and I have quite a bit of protection on the back. So that's really, really not a big issue, to be honest. Now, another thing I would like to mention is that I didn't have 1/2 inch plate. So I took, let me see if I can get this to focus again. I took this right here, which was 2 pieces of 1/4 inch plate. I beveled the inside edges, and then I welded the inside edges all the way around, filling in that bevel. That's what I did to make this 1/2 inch plate. Now, I've got it, as you can probably see in here, I have this also bolted through. So not only do I have the weld strength, but I also have the strength of being able to have the bolts holding it together. So, I mean, this bumper, while it's not the most pristine bumper, and I'm not trying to paint it as this awesome, awesomely fabricated bumper, it is a really good bumper. It's really, really strong. It's going to be more than sufficient for what I'm going to do, since I'm not doing rock crawling and all that kind of stuff. If you are planning on doing rock crawling, I would definitely suggest 1/4 minimal, probably 3/16 for your needs. I'm sorry, 3/8, not 3/16 for your needs. And I would, but that same design in 3/8 or 1/4 would be really, really sufficient for if you're planning on doing any kind of rock crawling or that kind of stuff. If you're just using it for a stronger bumper to hit trees with and stuff like that, this will work just fine and will not bend. I mean, you'd have to really hit a tree really hard for this to bend. But once again, 1/4 inch, 3/8 will be just fine for anything that you need for that kind of stuff. And 1/2 inch plate, 3/4 inch plate for your mounting brackets and for tow hooks, going to be just fine. I have lifted the Trooper up with this with a high lift jack. Doesn't dent my bumper, doesn't have any issues, doesn't bend the bumper, doesn't warp it, doesn't. And the Trooper is not a light truck. I mean, this Trooper has side rails on it, which aren't rock rails, so they're not that thick. They're just side tubes. It has 32-inch. Well, yeah, they're over 32-inch. They're like 32.5-inch, but they're 265, 75 R16s on it. And not only that, but they're the Cooper ST Max, which have the triple core outside wall, triple layer outside wall, whatever, protection on them. And they're not light. They're not light. Plus, I have 2-inch spacers all the way around, so they're aluminum, but they're still a weight. I have 2.5-inch exhaust on it, and I have a 2.8 top mount intercooler turbo diesel in the truck. So it's not a light truck, but the high lift can pick it up just fine on this bumper. The bumper doesn't dent, it doesn't bend, it doesn't warp, it doesn't do anything. So, you know, while the other kinds of bumpers, the big HD bumpers, will work, they can be overkill. I drive this truck on the street more than anything, and the off-roading I do in it is more of an overlanding, if you want to call it that, or sightseeing, where it's mainly mud and gravel and going up hills and not rock crawling and that kind of stuff. When I do hit stuff, it's a small tree and it's not hard. So for me, it's a perfect setup, and that's why I built it the way that I did. So if you have any more questions, or if I didn't explain good enough how I did this, then let me know and I will fill you in a little bit more. But I think that I kind of explained the purpose of my design and how I made it pretty well. One thing I will suggest though, is really and truly figure out your needs. Now, considering the price of materials here in Chile, everything that I did with this, all the disc used, all the welding rod, I probably have 1/2 kilo, which is about 1 pound of welding rod, because I made it with a stick welder. I have probably, in all the materials, I don't know, maybe everything, 80 bucks minus the electrical cost. Yeah, probably $80 minus the electrical cost and everything. So, you know, $80 for a medium weight bumper is not a bad deal, and this thing will last me forever. Now, I still have to make my swing out tire carrier, and I'm not using a trailer spindle and hub with the bearings in that. That's just overkill. I'm just going to use a bolt and some bushings, honestly. I do have a hub that I had made up in a machine shop that I might use, but it'll only be because I already have it. It will not be because I feel it's necessary. But yeah, a good Teflon bushing, or a really high density, like, I can't remember what the product is called, but it's like nylon and it's really, really dense. That with a grease fitting and a good solid sleeve tube on the outside is more than enough for most tires and high lift jacks and stuff, if that's what you're wanting out of a swing out tire carrier. So as I do that project, I will try to go slower with it. I will try to video it all, and then that way you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm also going to go over some of the techniques that I've been learning about how to cut with an angle grinder to get the angles you want and that kind of stuff, because if you're not using a chop saw, cutting angles can be really difficult. But I'm going to try to go over that and show you guys what I've learned about it so that it'll help you as well. So till next time, hope this was informative. I hope it helps you guys with your projects, and I hope that I could inspire you by the work that I've done here to get out there and build something for your own rig. Please don't forget to stop by my sites. Don't forget to stop by beginnersfab.com. Also, take the time, please, to check out my off-road podcast. I have had a number of very cool guests on my podcast. I've covered a number of really helpful topics, it seems. People are liking the show. I've recently had on the show John Kappa, who was the former editor of 4-Wheel Drive magazine, if I'm not mistaken. You'll have to listen to the podcast. But I know he was a former editor of JP magazine. He's still a freelance writer for a number of truck and Off-Road Magazine. So he's a very knowledgeable person. He did a great job with me on the show. He was a really fun guest to have on. I've also had Carrie Sharon, who is a very talented fabricator, and Brad Blake, who also was very helpful in information about doing a SAS. I mean, he sassed an Amigo. So if you can sass, oh, he turboed it too. I mean, he's got the knowledge, and those are not vehicles. That's not a vehicle that's done regularly or popularly. But you can learn a lot from what he says. And then also I've had Rick from radoffroad.com. He was a great guest to have. All those people make my show really, really fun to listen to. I'm just the medium in which they can convey their information, really. So I really encourage you to stop by and check that out. Also, stop by and check out ericmcgrew.com, or I'm sorry, ericmcgrew.tv. I have a lot of information on there. I have videos that I put up. I'm also working on some blog posts that talk about the pros and cons of different products and different things. And don't forget that you can always check out my YouTube channel as well. That's a fun place to be. And I'll have more videos coming out on beginnersfab.com as well. So, till next time, my name is Eric McGrew again, and I'm the host of this show. So, hope you guys are happy with what you're seeing, and come back and see what I'm getting into for the next time.